We'll get started. I want to welcome everybody and thank you all so much for participating in this workshop. I'm Lily Getz, Professor of Spanish and Coordinator for Teacher Preparation in Languages and ESL at Longwood University. And I know some people will come in late, so that's fine. If I need to stop and repeat anything, type in some comments and I'll be glad to have a look at that. We can do that. I want to thank Dr. Dick Kuttner and everyone else at FLAVA for hosting these workshops. I hope everyone is planning to come to the March workshop presented by Dr. Stephanie Knaus on achieving the world readiness standards for learning languages through social justice education. I am not going to miss that one. I've been asked to let everybody know also that FLAVA is recording this workshop and it will be up on the FLAVA YouTube channel within a week. All attendees will receive an email at that time with the link for the YouTube recording of the workshop and the link to handouts that I'm providing and your certificate of participation in this workshop. What we're going to be talking about is the background. We're going to start with a little bit of background on communicative language teaching. We're going to review briefly what interpersonal communication is, which is what this workshop will concentrate on. We're going to explain what strategic interaction is and describe the steps for using strategic interaction in our classes. We're going to describe a sample scenario, what we're going to call scenarios, and we're going to take part as groups. You guys are going to be taking part in groups, assisting your fictitious actor in a video that we're going to see, and then you're going to take part in groups to compose a scenario that you can use in your classes, and then I will give you a link with a handout with lots of sample scenarios that you can adapt for use in your classes. Okay, so switch slides here. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. This is a new thing for me to use this program. The proficiency movement. What did we learn from the proficiency movement? Does anybody remember that movement from the 80s and 90s? I was there. It gave us a good foundation for transitioning into the era of communicative language teaching. For one thing, the proficiency concept taught us that students must go beyond their traditional role as responder to teachers' questions, and that their interactions must take on the characteristics of typical conversations that occur between native speakers in real-life situations, or rather what we're now calling interpersonal communication. Research on advanced level speech indicates that learners who had extensive exposure to natural native discourse have an advantage in terms of their fluency. Fostering more natural conversations means that we must modify our traditional ways of interacting with students through strategies such as listening and responding to the content of students' messages rather than listening exclusively for accuracy and not interrupting while students are speaking in order to correct errors. Another thing we have learned from the proficiency movement so long ago is that we need to provide opportunities for students to hear a great deal of comprehensible and authentic language and to use the language in meaningful interaction with others, to negotiate meaning in cooperation with others, and to participate in an environment that encourages and motivates self-expression in a non-threatening way. The proficiency movement also gave us the ACTFL oral proficiency guidelines and the oral proficiency interview based upon real-world communication. Sound still okay with everybody? Okay. Good. Ocean Lakes, hi. Okay. I used to teach in Virginia Beach, Kellam High School. Yay. Okay, national standards. What we used to call national standards, okay? We call them now the World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages. And we have the 3 modes of communication. We're going to talk about those. The first C of the 5 C goals is communication. Notice that it's at the top of the cute 5-ring logo. I think there's a reason for that. Communication. The communication goal states, communicate effectively in more than one language in order to function in a variety of situations and for multiple purposes. So as you know, there are 3 communication standards or modes of communication: interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. So let's look at these descriptions for each mode for just a moment. Interpersonal communication. Learners interact and negotiate meaning in spoken, signed, or written conversations to share information, reactions, feelings, and opinions. We'll come back to that in a minute. Interpretive communication. Learners understand, interpret, and analyze what is heard, read, or viewed on a variety of topics. And presentational communication. Learners present information, concepts, and ideas to inform, explain, persuade, and narrate on a variety of topics using appropriate media and adapting to various audiences of listeners, readers, or viewers. Okay. So what is interpersonal communication? Let's see what we think are the characteristics of interpersonal communication. Anyone out there want to chime in? What are the characteristics of interpersonal communication? Anybody typing yet? What do you think? Some of you know these things. Ocean Lakes, typing something. Okay. I'll tell you what I think in a minute. Fairfax County is typing. Okay. Interactive questions and answers. Okay, good. Negotiation of meaning. Yes, yes, Fairfax. Exchange of information. Yes, Prince William. Super. Okay, Longwood's typing. Let's see. Why are we typing Longwood? Unpredictable communication. Yes. Exactly. Spotsylvania and Loudoun Valley are typing. You guys are great participators. Multiple attendees are typing. Okay, we have there's lots of characteristics. Exchanging language to communicate thoughts and ideas. Yes, exactly. Between a sender and a receiver. Yes. There's people communicating, someone sending, someone receiving. Victoria. Spontaneous communication. Spontaneous, yes, that's the word we're going to be using. Exchanging thoughts and ideas, yes. So lots of people have lots of cool ideas that are yes. So we're going to put some of those up in bullets here, yes. Keep writing things if you want. Two-way exchange of information between two or more people, yes. That is going to be one of our big characteristics. So it involves speaking and listening, which can be conversation. It can be writing and reading and texting. Emailing and social media and all those kinds of things, okay? This two-way exchange of information can be face-to-face or in a phone call or Skype or FaceTime. It can be texting, can be electronic chats. I'm looking to see if anyone else is typing anything, okay? Posting messages on Facebook in situations where one expects interaction. We're expecting somebody to respond. When someone is communicating, we're expecting a response. It's spontaneous. Thank you, all you people that were saying spontaneous and unpredictable. It's not scripted. Okay. It's not performed as a memorized skit of any kind. Okay. It's meaningful and purposeful. Thank you, you guys that have been putting that sort of thing in here. Meaningful and purposeful. Has an objective, a communicative task. There's a task. So working in pairs to do mechanical grammar exercises out of a book is not interpersonal communication, even though two people are talking. So there we go. You can have two people talking, but that doesn't mean it's interpersonal. There's usually an information gap. Somebody was saying there's an exchange of information. We need to know something. One speaker needs to acquire information that the other speaker has, or at least one speaker doesn't know what the other is going to say or how he or she will respond. So pair activities in which student A and student B know in advance how the other will respond, such as with memorized skits, do not reflect true interpersonal communication. It requires negotiation of meaning. Since it's spontaneous, conversational partners must listen to and interpret what the other says. So they often need to negotiate meaning between themselves to get clarification, to ask for explanations, to ask the other to repeat, or to get confirmation of what they think the other is saying, or to speak slower. I'm really sorry. You know what? I got an award one time for fastest speaker. So thank you for telling me to slow down. I'm going to do it. It's really hard. But yes, we're talking about negotiation of meaning for clarification, getting explanations to ask someone to repeat, or to get confirmation of what they think the other is saying, or to indicate a lack of understanding. They may find it necessary to use gestures to make their message clear. That's a negotiation. Or to circumlocute or express a thought in an alternative way when their partner doesn't understand. Slowing down. Okay. Interpersonal communication is often confused with presentational communication, which refers to one-way communication in oral or written form for an audience of listeners or viewers or readers that are not expected to interact. Sometimes we might have a tendency to include opportunities for presentational communication, such as preparing and performing memorized skits, and we think we are engaged in interpersonal communication because they're going to be talking to each other. But we really want to distinguish between the two in order to provide ample opportunities for the spontaneous communication that characterizes interpersonal communication. Okay, strategic interaction is what we're going to be doing here today. It's a model that gives us creative ways to have students engage in spontaneous interpersonal communication. From what we've just been saying, we know that we need to make our classroom activities meaningful, real-life tasks. This means that students must learn to handle the unexpected. No longer can we ask students to create a skit and then act it out in front of the class. Well, we can do that, but it's presentational communication as long as we understand that and we know we are going to have other opportunities for the interpersonal and spontaneous communication. But in that skit that's memorized, there's no risk, there's no negotiation, no attempt to get information. And furthermore, what task does the rest of the class have while a group is performing? So today we're going to describe a way of injecting that risk and negotiation into our students' lives. We'll be using ideas presented by Robert J. DiPietro in his book, Strategic Interaction, Learning Languages Through Scenarios. And I'll give you the information on that book. Let's see, scenarios, okay? DiPietro calls scenarios those real-life happenings that entail the unexpected and require the use of language to resolve them. This approach requires groups of students in a role play to elect actors, but then the groups remain active as they assist their actors, and the actors learn to take risks and negotiate meaning to resolve unexpected issues as speakers do in real contexts. The resulting interactions can be surprisingly engaging for students as all students become involved in different aspects of the role play. Later, in just a little while, we'll work in groups to create your own role play scenarios. I see Spotsylvania asked, does anyone else have connection from Lily breaking up periodically? And what do we do in that case? That happened with the December workshop too. No, we're hearing everything fine. Whew, yay, Fairfax. Sound cuts out at Henrico. We're good at Ocean Lakes. Still a slight echo noise. Some of these things, I don't know if they're related to the speakers that each place has. Lots of static. That's a speaker thing. Washington and Lee is okay. Henrico, it's bearable. Okay, I'm really sorry about this. Now it's stopped. Okay, Jamestown. It is weird. We can deal with it. Okay, we're going to move along. I'm really sorry. We're going to brainstorm some ways to avoid this because it did happen in the December workshop also. So we're going to be working in groups in just a little while to role play, to create some role play scenarios. And then I'll give you a link for a handout with some scenarios that I've made up or that come from DiPietro's book. Let's see. This strategic interaction approach can be used with any level, any textbook or no textbook, any teaching style or method. We're going to see how strategic interaction differs from the role play activities that many of us are already doing. It involves 3 basic steps which students will follow. Okay, strategy planning. The first stage, DiPietro calls rehearsal, but we're going to call it strategy planning to avoid the misconception that students will rehearse memorized roles. That's not what we're going to be doing, so we don't want to call it rehearsal. The second stage is called performance, and then there's a debriefing stage. We're going to examine each of these steps in just a moment. But each scenario performance will be different from all the other performances of the same scenario because there's rarely a single solution to any one scenario. We're going to find that. So the role of the teacher. Teachers must play several roles during the process. During the strategy planning phase, when students meet in groups to plan strategies and prepare for the performance, the teacher must be a guide, a counselor, a coach, a devil's advocate. During the performance, the teacher must join the audience, but still be ready to coach. In the debriefing phase, the teacher takes on the role of discussion leader and commentator, grammar reviewer, for those of you who want to include that. Next, we'll talk about how to get started, and later on, how to design our scenarios that correspond to the themes in your textbook or themes that you choose for your classes. Strategy planning stage. Let's look at the basics for using a scenario. Remember that it's not a skit that the students will prepare and present. Rather, it's a situation that can turn out in unexpected ways, and students must be prepared to respond according to whatever happens during the scenario. Site leaders, if you have printed out the heart attack scenario, would you hand that out if it's not already been handed out? There's a heart attack handout that sites should have, and we're going to use that scenario on that handout to sort of go through how this works. On this handout, we can see all three roles, so the students aren't going to get a handout like this with all of the roles on it, okay? But we're the teachers, so we're going to have this handout so we can see how the whole thing works, okay? Students will eventually get a handout with only their role, which you're familiar with. I'm sure that's how we do these things, okay? Do we have all the handouts? So while some handouts might still be going out, of course, we're going to divide the students into as many groups as there are roles in a given scenario. So this handout, we can see there's 3 roles in it. Okay, so there would be 3 groups of students. If there are only 2 roles in a very large class, you'll want to have more than just 2 groups, because more than about 5 students in a group isn't very productive. We'll talk about that, okay? Rather than have 2 or more performances of the same scenario, it's better to have a different scenario for the additional groups, because once the scenario has been acted out, it would not make much sense for others who have watched it to perform the same one. So you can have 2 different scenarios being strategized at the same time if your classes are very large, which is probably almost everybody's case. Or you can create additional roles for a scenario. Some scenarios can have as many as 5 roles. In your packet, I believe we have a scenario with 5 roles. As you can see, this one called the heart attack has 3 roles. So we want to give each student a description of the role for the group. And each group will plan the strategies for its role and practice the possible variations that can present themselves. They need to try to anticipate problems that could arise and plan to deal with them. During this strategy planning phase, the teacher must be everywhere, as we know, helping the groups, suggesting possible turns of events, helping with grammar, etc. Depending on the scenarios, this stage can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. Most roles can be planned and strategized in 5 or 10 minutes. Groups should not know what the other roles are or what they are planning. So while they're in this strategy planning stage, they should not let the other groups know what they are up to. It's a secret. By planning and strategizing, of course, we can't mean memorizing a dialogue they would plan to present, since the members of one group can't know what the others are planning or what they'll say, or in some cases, even who the other roles are. They have to prepare themselves for several possible situations. In real interactions, one can't know what the others will be responding, but one can anticipate possible reactions and prepare for those. When the planning is nearing completion, each role selects an actor. The actor will be the one to perform, while the groups serve as resources and prompters for their actors. We'll say some more about the job of the groups while actors perform in just a minute. But let me say right now, while we're talking about the actors, the actor that each group selects needs to be a different student every time we do this, so that the same student, the group might choose the best student in their group who they think would be the best student, and that can't be the case. And we'll see why it's not going to matter if it's not the best student, okay? Let's talk about the target language. I want to say a word about the use of target language on the roll sheets. Depending on the level of your students, ideally, let me click on that, okay? Ideally, the instructions are going to be in the target language. Many of the ones in your handout packet that you'll get in an email are in English so that you can put them into the language you are teaching. Some in the packet are in Spanish because that's what I've used and I've put them in there. So those of you that teach Spanish will have some of those. On the other hand, I believe that it's acceptable to use them in English in some cases, especially in beginning levels, since the object is for students to plan strategy and execute it in the target language. And if the setup of the role is not in that language, it's of minor importance, especially in the lower levels. That'd be helpful. Still, many of you will prefer to convert these scenarios to your target languages, and I prefer them that way too. In addition to the description of the role, sometimes it's useful to add a brief list of useful vocabulary on the roll sheet, on each roll sheet, or a list of grammatical points that would be used to carry out the role play. The performance stage. Okay, we're done with planning and strategizing. So once a group has selected its actor, the actors perform. The role of the group members is very important during this stage. They don't just sit back and everybody's watching a show. For example, during the performance, if an actor gets stumped, because remember, this is spontaneous, and can't think of what to say, he or she can appeal to his or her group for help, all of the time keeping in the target language, of course. By the same token, if a group sees its actor in trouble or just wants to suggest something for the actor to say, the group may call its actor over to confer or simply call out suggestions in the target language. In this way, the actors don't always have to be the most skillful students in the class, and they know they'll be allowed to get help from their group. Their nervousness diminishes when they know they're not really alone. It also provides for participation for all the members of a class, not just those performing. The group members must stay attentive so they can help their actor. In addition, it creates more variety in the situations produced, since many heads will be providing ideas instead of one or two. Our job during the performance is to encourage students to prompt negotiation between the actors if needed, or to prompt them to seek help from their groups. We should also monitor the language used and jot down any notes about language structures that are being used and others, and what they're doing well too, and others that we may want to call attention to during the debriefing stage. You'll find that many different outcomes are possible for any given scenario. As you use a scenario in different classes or from one semester to another, you'll always have new performances, so it never gets old for us. That's good. The heart attack. How is interpersonal communication fostered? In the scenario you have in the handout, the heart attack, as you can imagine, there are several possible outcomes to this. Read it over for a minute if you haven't already. And you have some questions on the slide. Talk to a partner or to somebody near you, okay, about the questions, and share your ideas. Type in some ideas and comments to respond to these questions, and we'll discuss that for just a little bit. What elements provide for spontaneous communication once you've read through? What elements provide for negotiation of meaning and circumlocution? What elements provide for creativity of expression, different outcomes? We have some people typing in. Oh, 2-3 minutes, not a whole long time, Longwood. What elements provide for spontaneous communication? You told Javi 3 minutos. Okay. You can have 3 if you need it. It's okay. We can discuss this for a while. We don't need a lot of time, probably. Jamestown and Spotsylvania have some ideas. If actors do not know what the other's info cards say, then they have to create the conversation on the go. Exactly. And in this case, they may not even know about all of the roles, who the roles are going to be. Student A not knowing what others have to say, lottery and a bad heart, providing a lot of spontaneous communication. Right, exactly. Some of the roles are going to provide information that the others don't have, and that'll have to be a surprise in some cases, maybe, and they'll have to be spontaneous about thinking about what their reactions are going to be. Will there need to be much negotiation of meaning for this kind of role? Circumlocution. Anybody have any ideas about that? Okay, so I'm going to provide some ideas. The group performing the patient role knows nothing, as we've said, as you guys have said, about the lottery winnings, and will have to adjust to this news if it's given to him or her. He could decide to pretend he's having another heart attack. The spouse group, or he could actually have another heart attack, okay? The spouse group can plan to tell the husband or not. He or she may worry about causing another heart attack, or may want to make sure he includes his winnings in his will, Or maybe she does not want to provoke the next heart attack. Or maybe she does. The doctor doesn't know about the lottery winnings either, right? So what will he or she do when confronted with this news? And the patient is sitting there. This scenario turns out differently each time. Ocean Lake's typing something. Thank you. Um, sometimes it's really humorous when students are performing this. Ocean Lake says, since there are several roles, conversation will naturally be different and would spark communication continuously. Yes, and it'll evolve continuously, as you say, as they find out what their other roles have to say and add to the conversation. So sometimes this turns out really funny, and it's an act. Okay, so if our patient has another heart attack, it's not for real. That would be a very tragic thing, but our students are going to be laughing, depending, I suppose. The key to good scenario writing is this element of surprise. Actors and groups will have to make adjustments as the situations evolve during the performance. This spontaneous interaction is what makes the language meaningful. Let's talk about debriefing. After the performance, we're going to have the debriefing stage. This is the stage which most resembles the traditional activities of the language teacher. For example, we're going to have a whole class discussion, and we're going to expand on what was said, group explanations, suggesting alternatives, not just to expressions or statements, but sometimes to grammatical points. The difference is that the basis for these explanations or exercises is what the students themselves, I'm looking at whether anyone's typing, sorry, I keep interrupting myself, is what the students themselves have attempted to produce in the target language. Ideally, the best debriefings are organized around questions for which the students want answers. This way, students will have an interest in this part of the discussion. Some guidelines for this debriefing, okay? We want to really keep our priorities in order. The first commentary should be about the performance of the students. What was great about their performance? And we want to start with what was great, right? What was the outcome of the interaction? For example, did the patient get so excited he or she had another heart attack? How did the doctor respond to the surprising news? We can have a discussion about that, about the lottery winnings. Could there have been other resolutions to the issue at hand? Alternative endings. Alternate endings. The heart attack comes out differently each time, so ask students to propose other possible outcomes during this phase. Excuse me. Only after these things have been talked about, the content, should we turn students' attention to any of the structures that were used. Special care should be taken not to identify, obviously, a particular student who made an error during the performance. We know that. The goal is to encourage all students and to stay encouraging during this part of it. And encourage students to take the lead in discussing the grammar, if we're having a grammar discussion. Ask them if they had questions about how to say something during the performance. Bring up any notes that you took on language structures that were not used correctly, if they are relevant to the structures they should already be familiar with or have been studying recently. Keep explanations simple and direct. This is not the time for lengthy explanations of grammar. Maybe there's never a good time for lengthy grammar explanations in my book. Students should be told that they may ask questions about anything related to the target language and its use, and they should be told not to be afraid to make mistakes, but rather than focusing extensively on grammar, remind students that accuracy grows with practice. The more you speak, the better you'll get at it. So I don't usually spend a lot of time with grammar discussions after a performance. I do ask students if there's questions, and we talk about a couple things, but we don't want to make this a really long thing. Okay, which of these three stages is the most important? Ideas? Anybody want to answer that one? What do you think? Which is the most important for any of you out there? Is it just so obvious that I shouldn't ask you? Fairfax County. Equally important. Okay, that's possible. I have one I think is more important, but that's okay. They are fairly equally important. We wouldn't have the three stages if they weren't all of real good use and purpose. See, there's somebody else typing, so I'll wait just a second and then we'll go on. Longwood says performance because it's the essence. Okay, performance. And Ocean Lakes says Ocean Lakes. Oh, okay. I'm gonna give Longwood a star. Okay. Performance. Although Fairfax County, you get a star too because they are all equally important. But performance is where the interpersonal communication takes place. Ocean Lake says the first one because if you do not have the content, you can't perform the test. So that's true too. The preparation stage, the strategy planning stage is really important. And that's where we're going to find out in a minute. I'm going to tell you, you already know, that interpersonal communication occurs there also. Okay. So yes, performance. This is where interpersonal communication takes place, the interaction, not only among the actors, but also between the actors and their groups. Okay. So the strategy planning stage, as we're saying, is also taking place. Is where interpersonal communication is also taking place, because students have to make suggestions to each other. They have to plan. They have to talk over what their options and what the alternative strategies are going to be. So a lot of interpersonal communication is taking place there, and all three stages should be kept as much as possible in the target language, if at all possible, because that's going to involve interpersonal communication then too. Okay, so yes, so everybody's right. Everybody gets stars. Yay. Okay, we're gonna watch a video in a minute. Okay, it's very brief. It's 5 minutes, but we might fast forward through some of it because if I can control it, I'm not sure if this is gonna work. Um, in the video, we have some intermediate students of Spanish, um, and let me see what happens if I put there. Okay, it's called The President and Technology. And this scenario was on the pros and cons of too much technology. And the roles were President and Mrs. Obama. So obviously this was filmed a few years ago. Sorry about that. In this scenario, Mrs. Obama thinks there's too much technology. The role play thing on their role sheet was there's too much technology and families should limit how much time children have to use technology. But President Obama, on his role description, thinks we need more technology to stay competitive with other countries for security and other reasons. They don't know their daughters are going to enter the discussion. Sasha and Malia are surprise roles, so everyone will have to adjust when they enter the scene. The students in this scenario that you're going to see were supposed to be using the subjunctive for influencing, expressing emotion, doubt, or impersonal expressions. Please ignore the really bad pronunciation of some of the students in the video. Remember, the actors do not need to be the best students because they can get help from their groups. And we're going to see some of that also during the video. While we watch, we're going to pretend we are their groups. Okay, we're going to see this going on and we're going to pretend you guys are going to be their groups, whichever group you want to be, and we're going to make suggestions to the actors. So while we're watching, I'm not sure if we can see the chat part while the video's on, because I don't know how this works, but go ahead and type in some prompts towards students, okay? President Obama, suggest this or that, okay, if you want, okay? If that's not going to work, that's fine. Okay, we're going to try to see if this will work. Here we have this video. I'm going to click on it and see what happens. Is it showing? No. Okay, hang on. Is this showing on your screens? Anybody? No. You just see the link. Okay, this didn't work. Yes, Washington and Lee. Go ahead and click it and see if that'll work. I'm going to turn mine off. Can you see it? I see a little box in my top corner. Longwood says it works. We can click and view it. Okay, so apparently please click it and you can view it. People have to click on the link. Okay, click on the link at your host site, at your sites, please. And so you will control then, each site will control whether you want to fast forward and stuff like that. It's 5 minutes long, so if you get tired of watching it, just exit out and we'll talk about it. Fairfax County doesn't have sound. Spotsylvania says allow pop-ups. Thank you guys, all of you, for all these tips. Allow pop-ups. I suppose if I click on this, I don't see a click thing. Send the link to us in the chat. Can I do that? I don't know how to do that. Okay, wait, I might be able to do that. Okay, let me stop that. Let me stop that. Stop that. Okay. Oh, thank you, Washington and Lee. Okay, there's the link. Has everybody got sound now? Click on the link, Fairfax, click on the link in the chat and see if you have the sound on your at your site. It's just a YouTube video. I went to high school in Fairfax County, by the way. Great place. I'm assuming it's working and everybody's able to see the video. Fairfax, I don't know why. Our other places are seeing the video, right? You watch it through a participant. Okay, that's a great idea. Just watching it moving right up off the link on the screen. Okay. That's how it should work. Thank you, Jamestown. So we'll stop in just a minute because others are probably finishing. Give just one more minute for others to finish watching it. Is everybody about through the video? Or just want to quit anyway? Hanover's finished. Good. Yeah, we're not going to comment on their pronunciation, but that can be one of the debriefing topics that we would do some practice with. Longwood's finished. Good. Finish here too. Okay, so most people are finishing. We're going to talk about the debriefing stage for this video. I assume the PowerPoint's showing. How was their performance? What do we want to say about their performance as opposed to the grammar? Okay. Do we want to say anything about or ask students what other outcomes could have been portrayed or other possibilities for what could have happened? Anybody want to chime in about the outcomes and other possible outcomes? Are the kids going to get to have all the time they want on their devices? We don't have the complete role description, so Malia storms out. I like that one. Okay, that's a pretty realistic outcome. Not a lot of enthusiasm. Yeah. There you go. I only had one day I could film, so I didn't get a real enthusiastic group. Share one thing you liked, one thing you wonder about, and one suggestion for improvement. That's outstanding. Yeah. One thing you liked about it. Anybody want to comment on that? One thing you wonder about, a suggestion for improvement. Suggestions for improvement could be the enthusiasm thing and the pronunciation thing, right? Longwood and Ocean Lakes have something to say. Bringing in the Secret Service. Okay, great alternative ending. Okay, that could be another role. Okay, or the girls could say the Secret Service is going to give us their devices, so we got all kinds of national security access. This one does lend itself to a lot of creativity. Have them think about the other side. What stood out? What could you change? Yes. Talk about, okay, one group talking about for the other group or the groups about themselves. What could you change? What would you do differently? Exactly. So there are some possible alternative endings that could be pretty interesting. Then we've got language-related comments or explanations that we would, let's say we were conducting the debriefing with our students, mentioned the pronunciation thing. More action and body movement, yes. So as they're in their groups planning strategy, when they elect their actors, we could be encouraging students to remember that they're acting. This is an acting thing. They pretend they're real actors on the stage, pretend they're really these people, and they want to get into it. A little more affectionate with each other. Yeah, this is a husband and wife that we know that they love each other and their kids and they're wonderful and it's a nice loving family. They could act more like that. These guys are definitely not actors, right? Add linguistic expressions that are characteristic of the language. Okay. We could suggest some during the debriefing. Could also have a tap in actor switch. Yes, that's a great idea. So more people can practice. So you might have your groups, Ocean Lakes, thank you for that. You might have your groups elect 2 actors or even 3 if you think the performance is going to go on for a while. And they can be actors 1, 2, and 3. And at some point, there's a switch and everybody switches out. That's a great idea because more people can be the actors then, and more people can then be the group helpers and assist everybody. So these are some really great ideas. Thank you. I'm going to be using some of these. Provide a box of generic props to liven things up a bit. Yeah, that would be great. Lots of us have those kinds of things, right? Yeah, those are great ideas. Okay, so we're going to go on to another scenario. Okay, you are going to plan the strategy and perform a scenario. Okay, this is a scenario that involves using past tenses and direct and indirect objects. So I've used it after reviewing those points and using a lot of other activities for practice. So you don't have any roll sheets yet, but you're going to have some in just a minute. So before I have students do this scenario, we have been using the past tenses and we've been practicing some direct and indirect objects. Okay, so in a minute we're going to come back to this slide and we're going to plan our strategies and so forth. But let's review direct and indirect objects. Okay, so when I am preparing for this scenario, I use this sort of practice activity, okay, to bring this back up in their minds. And I usually have a box of stuffed animals that are my direct objects. The animals are direct objects. And I model offering a toy to a student with their response. Okay, do you want my elephant? Yes, I want it. Give it to me. Okay, I'm giving it to you. Then I offer an animal to each student, and I do this little dialogue with each student, and they respond. And I usually have it up on the screen in Spanish. And so they can see what they're supposed to say. If it's really new stuff, if it's not that new, it's like we've done this before, we don't need that up on the screen. So today you can offer whatever you've got, okay, a pen or a piece of paper or whatever, to someone near you. Ask if they want whatever that is, and they should answer yes, because we're doing this little thing here, okay. I want it. Give it to me, please. And you'll say you're giving it to him or her, to you, and they'll say thank you. Okay, let's do that. Find your thing and offer it to somebody. You want my pen? Yes, I want it. Give it to me. Okay, I'm giving it to you. Thank you. Okay, have we done that? Okay. Now, you've got someone else's thing, okay? Hang on to it for a minute. You've got something that somebody offered to you, okay? And then this thing is our toy or whatever you've got. I usually ask my students to walk around and offer their toy, their animal, to someone else and get toys from others. So they should exchange with at least 4 or 5 others. And then, so after they've done that, they've had lots of chances to say the same thing over and over. But the direct objects in Spanish, anyway, I think in lots of other languages, they're feminine or masculine, and sometimes they're plural. I have 3 camels, okay? I have a bunch of little piggies in a thing. And so we have to adjust that, give it or them or the, it feminine or it masculine or whatever. So there's a lot of need for practices on some of that, okay? So for now, offer this thing that you got from somebody else to another person, okay? Do you want my whatever it is? Yes, give it to me. So now you've given someone else's thing away to somebody else, and you've gotten another thing, right? Are we done with that? Okay. So now you've got someone else's stuff, okay? And we're going to practice the past tenses, okay? So after we've done this thing with the animals for a while, I ask students to ask several others who gave them the toy they have. So take a moment now and ask several people near you who gave them the item that they have. Who gave you the pen? Who gave you the book? And they have to answer, so-and-so gave it to me. In English, this doesn't seem like it's a really big deal, which it kind of is when you're learning English as a second language. In Spanish and in French, I don't know any German, really, sad to say, but I'm assuming it's similar. That this is a little complicated. This is one of the hardest things for students of Spanish anyway, and I think French, to master this. Master it. That's not a good expression, but okay. So did you ask people who gave you stuff? Okay, you found out who gave them to them their thing. Okay. So now write a list of all the toys or things that you received. You've gotten 2 different things, I think, from other people. And then you're going to tell someone else who gave them to you. Okay. So you've got all these nice items. Make a little list. Okay. Got the pen from Mary. Okay. Got the paperclip from John. Okay. Tell people what you have. Okay. An elephant. Marco gave it to me. Maracas. Juana gave them to me. A flute from the Andes. Carlos gave it to me. Okay. Okay, you've explained to people. When we're done with that, then I usually go around and collect all the toys. I've got my box and I go around to each person and I give them a command. Give me the flute. And the student with the flute has to say, I'm giving it to you. Give me the elephant. That student says, okay, I'm giving it to you in Spanish, okay? And then I have to say thank you, okay? So for now, find the person who has your item. Somebody has your stuff, okay? And ask them to give it back to you. Give me my pen, okay? And tell them as you give it to them that you're giving it to that person, okay? Everybody got your stuff back? I hope so. Okay. Hopefully everybody has their pens and their paper clips and their things back. Okay. No fighting. Okay, so now we're going to go back to this um, scenario called the happy couple. And those kinds of activities with the direct and indirect objects or the past tenses, as you know, we can do those over days and days and weeks or whatever. So after you've, you know, gotten them fairly familiar with whatever past tense or whatever other grammar things are in your scenario, then you're ready to do a scenario, right? Or maybe not, and they're not all that great with it yet. It's fine. We can still do a scenario, okay? So we're ready. We are now really good at these direct objects and stuff. And we're going to do this scenario incorporating direct and indirect objects and a past tense. So we would like for you at your sites to please form 3 groups, if that's at all possible. Some sites have a whole lot of people, I think. Some sites just have a few people. So whatever you can do, provide, okay, nobody's typing, okay. Whatever you can do about dividing into 3 groups, because we're going to do a role play that has 3 roles in it, okay? So you could have between 2 and 5 people in your groups. If there's only 4 people at your site, you know, you've got a group of 1 maybe, and a group of 1 and a group of 2. So site leaders, if you would hand out the role A, B, or C, you've got some role sheets that you've cut apart, I think, A, B, and C. So one group gets role A, one group gets role B, one group gets role C, and I'll give you a minute to hand those out. And then we're doing this in English so that everybody can participate. Obviously, you would be doing this in your target language if you use this or a similar role scenario. And once everybody has all the groups have their role sheet, we're going to give you a few minutes for the roles to plan their strategies. The groups are going to plan their strategies. I do talk too fast. We're going through this pretty fast. Okay, Prince William is typing something. Oh, we don't have the link to the handout. The site leaders were supposed to print the handouts. Let me think in my head for a minute. I can give that to you. It'll take me a second if you don't have the handouts. But I don't want role A to see what role B is. There's the thing. Yes, everyone in one group there's a group for role A. Everybody in group A is role A. Everybody in group B has the sheet for group B, for role B. Everyone in role C. And in these groups, you want to keep your discussion quiet and, you know, discuss. You don't want the other roles to know, the other groups to know what you're doing and what you're talking about, or even who you are, okay? They don't know who your role is. Let's spend about 5 minutes to plan for the groups to plan their strategies without letting the other groups know what you're planning. You need to anticipate what possible reactions you may get from the other roles in order to plan for all the possibilities. I just want to say the groups for role C will need to plan to arrive on the scene once the performance starts after the other roles have been performing for a while. So the teacher, or in this case the site leader, okay, will give a cue to role C group when to come in, not at the beginning, okay? Okay, so we're going to take about 5 minutes to let everybody talk to people in your group, plan your roles, because in a little while you're going to perform in your sites, okay? I hope that works. So, Prince William, let me see if I can send you the link. It's going to take too long. Um, yesterday. Hmm. Okay. Okay, Jamestown. You should have three groups of people. No, Longwood, hang on for just a minute. Um, let them brainstorm a little longer. They need longer than this. Okay, Jamestown. You should have three groups of people, and each group has either role A or B or C from the handout that your leader should have printed out and cut up into the role sheets. And then the groups should be strategizing, and you can be going around to help them. If this were really our students, okay, they should strategize with what do they want to say, and what do they think is going to be the responses, and prepare for that, what kinds of things. And then in a minute, they're going to elect their actors. So long would hang out just a minute. Running an example of what this would be like. Yes, we're going to actually act it out. Okay, you guys in your places. I don't get to see you, sadly, um, but you're going to after the in just a few minutes. I'm going to tell you to go ahead and elect your actors. You can be electing your actors if you've already got things pretty well figured out. When you do this with students, it obviously takes a good while in the groups to plan the strategies. But we're the teachers. We don't need a whole long time for this. Um, so are the groups ready to elect their actors, or have they already elected an actor? Because you are going to actually get up and do this, okay? Don't start acting yet, okay? Fairfax is ready. Longwood's ready. Okay, if you're ready and your groups have an actor, you can go ahead and have your actors get up and start the scenario. Remember, group leaders, to have group C hold off and let groups roles A and B actors be having their conversation for a while. And when you think it's time for group C, their actor to come in, then you just indicate to them to come in. Okay? Does everyone understand? Do I need to explain some more? Because that's not a problem. And group leaders, you can be the facilitator, okay? You've got an actor performing. Groups, remember to help your actor. Actors, remember you can go back to your groups for help. Okay, is everybody performing? This can take a while. If some of you would type in when you've told Group C actor to enter, let me know, and I'll sort of know where we are with this. Fairfax, ready? Oh, oops, Fairfax. Typing, not typing. Still going, okay. This one takes a while, it's fine. Has anybody's actor C entered the scene yet? They don't need to yet, but some might have done that. Let me know. Okay, Ocean Lakes, you're ready for actor C to enter? Is that what you mean? So actor C has entered in all of the scenarios, is that right? Okay, actor C is in Fairfax. Still going? Actor C should probably go ahead and come up on the scene if he hasn't yet. Okay, Fairfax is finished. We want to find out in just a minute. Hang on. We want to know what happened. So Fairfax has finished their scenario. We want to hear from them in just a minute. Has everyone else finished or are they still going strong? Finished Hanover. I hope there's not going to be any physical violence in some of these scenarios. Are other places finished? Sometimes a scenario can go on and on. Sometimes that's good, but at some point we do limit this, okay? This scenario usually can take about 15 minutes to act out. We don't need to do the whole thing, but let me know if you are done. Actor C is still alive. Okay, I think we're gonna go ahead and do some debriefing. I want to know, and I think other sites want to know, what happened with actor C. He was the surprise, right? Yes, I do. That's in the handout that you'll have a link for. So let's do some debriefing here. Let's see if that's our next, oops, slide here. Okay. What do you want to say about the performance at your site? Okay. Nobody else got to see each performance. So have a discussion in your site about the performance as far as other outcomes that could have been portrayed, alternative endings, other possibilities. And then last, any language related comments, which, if you have native speakers of English doing this, it's probably not a big deal. But I'm going to give you a couple minutes to have some discussion in your sites and send in some typing, if you would, to tell us what was the outcome of your scenario, of this scenario. The girls turn on Juan Carlos and become best friends. You know what? That has happened in my classes. That seems to be probably a natural human reaction to something like this, I suppose. Longwood. Okay. Yes, during the planning stage, have a handful of arguments or sample sentences to help them with the conversation. Let's come back to that in a minute. Let's find out what happened Longwood, what happened to Juan Carlos? Any other sites want to share what happened to Juan Carlos? Both girls left him. Yep. He doesn't have much chance, does he? what other possible outcomes could there be? Okay, both girls left him. They're best friends. What else could have happened instead of that? I think the girls would make Juan Carlos choose between them. There's an idea. Yeah, it's another possible outcome. Juana has another boyfriend. Hey, good twist. So this first part of the debriefing stage, as you can see, um, lends itself to a lot of interpersonal communication with between you and the students, brainstorming other outcomes. Juana has another boyfriend. They make Juan Carlos choose. They both leave him, and they're best friends. Brainstorming these other ideas is just another really good stage where students are um, in interacting. So that's really great. Then the other part of it could be that you wanted to focus on any grammar things that you may have heard. Here's another one from Ocean Lakes. Juan Carlos just gives rings to all girls that he goes out with. Hey, maybe we want to meet up with Juan Carlos. He's got some rings. Great idea. These are great. And you'll find that your students are really creative and they're going to come up with all kinds of other alternative possibilities. And it makes for great discussions. So as one of you guys said, all three of these stages really can involve interpersonal communication, and they're all really valuable. Going back to, okay, Longwood said, have a handful of arguments or sample sentences to help them with the conversation. Yes, there's all kinds of other things you can do, either on the roll sheets where you can put, where you may have listed what grammar, in this case, direct and indirect objects and whatever. If you wanted to put some vocabulary or phrases, okay, to help them, or as you go around and circulate while the strategies are going on, that's part of our job at that point too, to help them brainstorm expressions or arguments, possible, you don't want to give away any outcomes or anything, but you want to, help them to be more creative because sometimes they don't have a lot of ideas on what could be is going on in a scenario, let's say. So great. Okay, so we're going to create a scenario. Okay, you're working really well in your groups, I can see. So the key to a good scenario is the element of surprise. So we're going to ask you to form a group with others or be in the groups where you are. But it might be nice if you are in a group with others who teach the language that you teach. Okay, if that's possible. That might not be possible where you are. But if that's possible, that's a great idea. And or otherwise, just work with someone and compose in English so that you can both convert those to your languages. And we're going to compose a scenario with at least 2 roles, okay? And we want to make sure to include an information gap. People need to know stuff, right? And if possible, an element of surprise, okay? So, and later you're going to share this with us, okay? So first thing we're going to do is you in your group, either with a partner or with 2 or 3 people. You don't need huge groups for this, obviously, but it doesn't really matter, whatever size your group is. Identifying a topic for when you're deciding to write a scenario and use it for your classes. Light, fun themes are always really good, but serious issues can be debated through this model also. So I have used scenarios about the death penalty, returning adopted children to their birth parents, political debates. You can do all kinds of heavy things depending on the maturity of your students and other factors. Controversial issues can be used for this kind of interaction. Just be aware of your context. One advantage of dealing with these issues through this methodology is that students will be playing a role and therefore are not as hesitant to take a stand as they would be if their own real feelings were being brought out. DiPietro, in his book, devotes a chapter to using strategic interaction in the teaching of literature. And I have found that it works very well in literature classes. I've included in this packet, yes, I have, in the packet that you're going to get the link for when you get the email. There's a scenario that I used with a poem by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, Hombres Necios. You guys that teach Spanish know that. It's a great, lends itself to lots of discussions. It's a great poem um, about machismo and stuff. There are some considerations to keep in mind as you brainstorm topics for your scenarios. Remember to create a topic that could have some surprise element. On the next slide, let me see what I'm doing. Okay, right. Okay, nope. Okay, or at least several possible outcomes. Okay, and it has to be of interest to your students. Okay, so here are some suggestions. Roles at a restaurant. There are all kinds of things. We probably all made up role plays with restaurant scenarios, right? Something's wrong with the food. It's the wrong food. It's got a bug in it. The soup has a fly in it, and those kinds of things. Okay, but we want to make sure that we write it such that there's going to be an element of surprise or difficulty. Roles in a store. Customers returning something. Clerk needs sales and doesn't want to accept returns. Manager can give bonuses to employees, so this guy is not going to want to accept a return, and some things like that. A driver stopped by police. I'm betting that most of you have probably done one of something like that. Students planning a language club event, and the principal is suspicious about what kind of event this is and whatever. So there's lots of possible ideas. Okay. I see Fairfax County wrote a question. How do you get everyone to speak since only one person is speaking from each group? Okay. Do you remember, I don't know if you saw the video enough that at some point in it, as lame as some of these students were, they went back to their groups and got info from their groups and suggestions. So the groups have to stay attentive. The more you do this, the more the groups will interact. As the groups, as your students get used to this sort of model of how they're going to do things, they will chime in more to help their actors. Okay, so the groups do have to stay attentive and help out their actor. They have to call their actor back to them if they wanted to suggest things, or they can shout out things to them. So that's how we do that. But that suggestion that somebody gave us a little while ago about having 2 or 3 actors from a group and they take turns and tag and come out and a substitute goes in, that's another really great way to get more people to be speaking. Okay, so thanks for that question too. Those are some topic ideas. Okay, we're gonna create roles. Okay. As you work in your group in just a minute to create and write up the role descriptions, and later as you develop scenarios for your classes, keep these points in mind. Okay. Identify 2 or more roles. It's really more fun when you have 3 or more roles. Okay. But to start out, maybe 2 is good, and in very beginning levels, maybe 2 is good. Option for a surprise: create a 3rd or a 4th role. Okay, students that they don't know about. There could be roles that they know about, which also can still have an element of surprise with whatever they're going to be saying or what their agenda is. And they could be roles that they don't know who they are, like we had with the Juan Carlos. The other roles didn't know Juan Carlos was going to happen upon the scene. They did know there was another group planning a role, so they knew someone was going to be walking in. But that's all they knew if we did this right? You're going to be writing up role descriptions, explaining the situation and giving the role a purpose. What do they need to communicate or find out? Note any vocabulary or grammar that they should try to employ during the conversation. I usually put those at the bottom right after the role description. Anticipate any confusions or difficulties that may present a problem to students as they plan their strategies in their roles. Make the descriptions as clear and simple as possible, especially if they're in the target language. You want them to, we don't want them to experience a great deal of difficulty in figuring out what the role is supposed to entail. So we're going to go ahead, if everybody's cool with this, and let your groups plan scenarios. Brainstorm it in your groups, okay? Write them up for each other. Do them in the language you teach, okay? For your classes, and or do them in English if you're with people that aren't teaching the same language. And we're going to do this for maybe, whatever you think, 5-10 minutes, maybe 5. We don't want to take too much time, but we do want you to, we wanted you to come out of here with a new one besides the ones I'm going to give you in my packet, because you're going to create things that are probably more appropriate for your particular students at all. So I'm going to be quiet. for a little while. If you want to type in any questions or comments, please do. In a little while, I will ask you to share with us just what the topic of your scenario is, how many roles you have, whichever sites are willing to type in something about what their different people. So each site might have, a whole bunch of people with different roles getting planned, or you might just have a couple of people and you're getting one scenario planned. So if you have any questions, let me know, and we're going to share some of these in just a few minutes. So, are any of the groups nearing a point where they would like to share something about the scenarios they're creating? Like, what level is it for? What's the topic? Who are the roles? Or do we need some more time? We have more time. Ocean Lakes, thank you. Two students from Project Green Teens and then Greta Thunberg enters. That sounds super. We're still working on more. Great. Keep going with that. That's a cool topic. Prince William, shopping for a trip. Roles, child shopping, parent, clerk. Could be used in level 1 or even 3 with our curriculum, but different grammar structures and more vocabulary. Yeah, okay. Shopping are really good topics for roles. We have a kid and a parent and a clerk. Very good. We need some sort of a surprise issue. Is one of those roles going to come in unexpectedly, or are they all going to be part of the deal? Spotsylvania scenario: Heather orders a bean burrito at Taco Bell, but gets a shoe with beans instead. Okay, I like that. That's going to be great. Spotsylvania: Bernie is missing a shoe. Oh my goodness. That is great. What level is that one for? I think that one and the shopping one are really good for beginning levels. Actually, any levels, but we do want to look for some ones that are good for beginning levels and not just more advanced ones. Level 1 and 2, right, okay. Fairfax County, how do you use this with level 1 since they can't really deal with a problem or surprise? Well, I'm going to put a couple of level 1 scenarios in that packet that you're going to get, but they can deal with a problem if it's simple and on the same topic, maybe not the first couple of weeks that you have them in class, but during level 1, yes, we can do this. And surprises, we can do that with level 1. I'm going to put some of those in the packet. If anyone else wants to chime in on that and give us some ideas right now, that would be good. Prince William says our surprises could be parent and child disagree about what to purchase. Price totals much higher than planned. Yeah, good surprises. And some of those can be in a level 1 if we're talking prices and shopping. Other ideas, other scenarios? Other groups want to share your scenario ideas? Longwood. In one of ours, date night, Mario wants fast food and wants to stay at home and play video games the whole night with his girlfriend. Marta is a vegetarian foodie and she wants to go out to a nice restaurant because they already stayed home late last date night. Okay, very good. I like that. What level might this one be for? We've got food vocabulary. I want to do this. I want to do that. Beginners, food items to go to want. Okay, great. Another beginning one. I like that. Anybody else want to share? If you take a few minutes to share within your group at least, even if you're not typing in for everybody, share some of your ideas. Okay. Um, so since I can't see anybody but me, I'm assuming that you're having a discussion in your sites about the sharing your scenarios. Oh, Longwood says a baker and a client. It's a wedding cake, and the baker misunderstood how the bride and groom what they looked like. The specifications for the cake are wrong, and now the couple do not want the cake. There's a big argument because the wedding is in 2 days with no time to make a new one. Okay. Um, yeah. Wedding vocabulary, descriptions vocabulary. Um, what else? Is that beginning level, intermediate? Could be fairly beginning, right? Not way beginning, maybe late beginning. Longwood's typing. Okay. So even if you are your site isn't typing in to share your scenario ideas, hopefully you're talking with each other at your sites to share your ideas a little bit. And the idea is that now you know um, the way this works and how to create scenarios that would have these kinds of characteristics. Longwood said the two clients are going to complain to the waiter about their food and the poor conditions of the restaurant. A manager shows up. Okay, these are all really good. I really thank everyone for sharing, and hopefully you're doing some sharing in your just within your groups. Longwood is typing again. And with all of these that you've been sending in, there are several outcomes. There's more than one outcome, depending on which group is going to be performing it. So these are going to be really interesting to be able to use with our classes. So we're about done unless you want more time in your groups to finish designing scenarios. I want to remind you that we're going to be sending you a handout with lots of sample scenarios that I've made up. And I'm going to try to add a few more beginning level ones to that packet. And you will also get your certificate of attendance. And what's the other thing I was supposed to tell you is coming in that certificate? And the link for the YouTube recording of the workshop. Okay, that was the other thing. Sorry, that you will be getting in a week or so, from what they tell me. So I want to thank everybody. Longwood is typing something again. Okay, that's my thank you slide. Okay, and if you have any questions, you have my email there. And really appreciate all of this participation. Vocabulary is food related, says Longwood. Right. Okay. Well, I really want to thank everybody for really this enthusiastic participation. And I want you to come to the next one, which is in March. Dr. Knaus will be presenting with social justice and the national standards, which we now call the World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages. Okay, which is going to be really good in March. So I thank all of the site leaders and all of the participants for all of this wonderful participation. Ocean Lakes is typing, so we'll hang on a minute. We have 15 more minutes if other people wanted to ask anything or do whatever. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you, Ocean Lakes. I love you. You know, I taught in Virginia Beach. I taught at Kellam High School, so you were nearby. Prince William, thank you. Thank you. You're welcome, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. And have fun developing scenarios. And if you develop some really good ones that you like, send them to me. I would like to use them too. I'm always trying to get new ideas. So thank you so much.